Welcome everyone to this World No Tobacco Day Research Symposium, which is hosted by the Tobacco Endgame Centre of Research Excellence. I'm Coral Gartner, I'm the director of this research centre, and I'm also the outgoing president of the Oceania chapter of the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco. And I hope that those of you who are able to attend yesterday of our SRNTO conference found it an enjoyable experience and a good opportunity for shared learning and networking. Okay, before we start today's symposium, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people. And they are the traditional owners of this place, known as Meanjin. We pay our respects to their ancestors and descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connection to country. And I also extend my respect to all First Nations colleagues who are joining us today for this symposium, either in person or online. And also I'd like to acknowledge that this is National Reconciliation Week, which is a time for all Australians to learn about our shared histories, cultures and achievements, and to explore how each of us can contribute to achieving reconciliation in Australia. It also encourages all Australians to be a voice for reconciliation and doing that in tangible ways in our everyday lives, where we live, work and socialise. This afternoon between 3 and 5:30, there will be a Sea of Hands event that's going to be happening just over in front of the main medical school building. And that's just part of the Reconciliation Week activities for the University of Queensland. So just letting you know about that will be going on over there if you're wondering what is happening. Okay, some housekeeping. So if you have your luggage with you today and you're looking for where to store it, probably over by the walls here out of the way is probably the safest place to put that luggage. All the presentations today are going to be here in the Oral Health Centre Learning Theatre, so you won't have to move between different rooms like we did yesterday. We do still have poster presentations up in the morning tea lunchroom, which is in the seminar room, same place as it was yesterday, if you were here yesterday. And just a note for people who have got posters up that we do have to have them removed by the end of lunch break. So if you can, maybe leave them up for half of lunch and then take them down would be really great. And again, the seminar room where lunch and morning tea and afternoon tea are going to be served is just in the room behind us if you come out and walk down the side here. Also, we do want to have at lunchtime a group photo and we have our expert photographer, Jeff Fong, Professor Fong is here with his camera. And so we want to meet up on the steps of the main medical school building, which is that lovely heritage building beside us, and we'll take a photo there. Okay, and so just the Tobacco Endgame Centre of Research Excellence, I just want to acknowledge it is an international consortium of researchers who are located throughout different institutions around Australia and also internationally. And you can see the full team on our website if you visit our website. But today I really particularly want to acknowledge our core team that are located here at the School of Public Health at the University of Queensland, because this event today and yesterday took a lot of background work and behind the scenes work, and it would not have gone as smoothly or been possible without contributions from particularly our core admin team and also our PhD students. So I just wanted to recognise and thank everyone who's contributed to helping out over these last 2 days. And especially my thanks to Joe Macri and Julia Groening, because they've really gone above and beyond to make everything work smoothly. So thank you. And now, next I'd like to introduce the Honourable Shannon Fentiman, who is the Queensland Minister for Health, Mental Health and Ambulance Services, and also Minister for Women. And Minister Fentiman was unable to join us in person today, but was kind enough to record this welcome address for us. So I'll play that for you now.
Hello, can I begin by respectfully acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm coming to you from. I'm in Meanjin, so it's the Turrbal and Yagara peoples, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm so sorry that I can't be with you in person for today's symposium, but I'd like to personally thank each and every one of you for being at the symposium and for your commitment towards a healthier Queensland. We know that the adult daily smoking rate has halved over the past 20 years, with just over 10% of Queensland adults reporting daily smoking in 2022. These amazing results are thanks to the incredible efforts of NGOs, governments, and our hardworking health workers. But we know there's still more to do. And it is so concerning to see that despite smoking rates decreasing across the country, the use of vapes is rapidly increasing, with a 40% increase in Queensland alone between 2018 and 2022. These vapes are being, marketed to our children quite deliberately with bright colours and flavours like ice cream and blueberry. Our young people are in danger and we must do everything we can to keep them safe and healthy. I'm so pleased that the Miles government has introduced a zero tolerance approach towards illicit tobacco and vapes. Since we introduced tough new laws last year, our public health units across the state have seized almost 8 tonnes of loose tobacco, 20 million cigarettes and 171,000 vapes from retailers. In addition to this crackdown on illegal distribution, we're continuing to create more smoke-free places at outdoor markets, school car parks and outdoor dining areas. And we're also looking at ways we can further support Queenslanders on their quit journey. Currently, we're the only state offering a free 12-week supply of nicotine replacement therapy for eligible people. And I'm so pleased that more than 3,800 Queenslanders have already received this support since it was introduced last year. While we know there is more work to be done, our government will not rest in our fight against illicit tobacco and vapes, and we will continue to pursue those who break the law and show a complete disregard for the health of Queenslanders. I wish you all the best for the Tobacco Endgame Symposium today, and I look forward to hearing how we can further reduce smoking and vaping rates here in Queensland. I'm optimistic that together we can create a healthier future for everyone.
Okay, so next I'll just run through briefly what we're going to have today as our program. So I'm just going to give a brief update on the situation in Australia and then internationally before I hand over to our keynote address which will be delivered by Professor Jeffrey Fong, and we'll have some time for Q&A. And then we'll have morning tea at 10:30. So please join us down for refreshments for morning tea. And then continuing research presentations from around the world at 11 o'clock. So we'll meet back here for an 11 a.m. start. Lunch is at 12. More research presentations after lunch, and then afternoon tea at 2:30. And then at 3 o'clock, we're having the launch of the Global Scientific Network on Law and Tobacco with a live Q&A coming to us from the Netherlands, and then some final research presentations, and hoping to finish up around 4:15 today. Okay, so now I'll just give a bit of a background introduction to today's event, actually. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge my funders. So I have funding from competitive grants from the National Health and Medical Research Council and the Australian Research Council, and also funds from the University of Queensland, and various grants for specific projects. But I don't have any commercial funding, and I do not accept funding from the tobacco or recreational vaping industries. So if we look now at the smoking prevalence in Australia from 1969 through to 2022, 2023, Australia has done remarkably well at reducing smoking. And I think it's well recognised that internationally, we're up there as global leaders in that. So now, smoking in Australia is down around 10% for daily smoking. And we're heading down quite close to, it's 11.1% in the last National Drug Strategy household survey for current smoking, and less than 10%, 8.8% for daily smoking. So we are well and truly on target for reaching some of our goals based on these statistics. So we've got government target goal of 2025, less than 10% smoking, and 2030 goal of less than 5%. So I guess it's that more less than 5% goal where it starts maybe getting a little bit more challenging to reach down to those levels there. But certainly in terms of the first goal, we're well on track. So these are some projected smoking prevalence estimates that I did with Jan Barendrecht and Wayne Hall many years ago, and these were published in 2009. That's the lines you see there. And then what I've done is overlaid on top of that, the orange squares are the observed smoking prevalence that we've seen since those projections were done. And it's interesting to see that it tracked quite well for many years until this last data point at 2022, 2023, when we're doing better now than what the projections would suggest based on a continuation of smoking uptake and smoking cessation rates. So that's a really good news story. Suggests that we may be on an accelerated path just in this last period, but of course that's just one data point. And so we want to see what happens at the next national survey and see if that continues or whether that's just a blip. But it does bode well, I guess, for us, again, achieving those goals. So this data point here, it fits with the modelled scenario that I did, which was looking at doubling of the decline in smoking uptake rate and continuation of smoking cessation rate. So this would track with that we're doing really well at reducing that smoking uptake. So there is going to be updated modelling from our investigators based at the University of Queensland with Professor Blakely and Driss Ait Awakram and Samantha Howe. And so these results hopefully will be able to be shared next year. And also with those results will be some estimates of potential impact of various policy impacts that will be modelled. So one of the things with these sort of overall smoking cessation, smoking prevalence rates is that they really do hide, though, the inequalities that we see in smoking in Australia. And so this slide is just showing what's happened based on SES status, which is determined by socioeconomic indexes for areas, an ABS measure of where you live and its associated level of advantage and disadvantage. So we can see for the people living in the most disadvantaged areas, the lowest quintile, smoking prevalence in 2010 was nearly 25%, and that's reduced down to 15.7%. So that's still going down well. And but then when you look at the people in the most advantaged areas, you know, they already had very low smoking prevalence at 12.5%, and that's down to like nearly only just around 7% now. So the absolute difference between these prevalences has actually declined if you're looking at absolute rates, but the relative rates actually seem to be getting bigger. So again, this is something to keep in mind when we're talking about achieving a tobacco endgame, that we want to achieve it equitably for everyone. And we actually want to see people in these groups that have the highest smoking prevalence to actually accelerate and catch up to those people who are doing better socioeconomically. Okay, and now these are some smoking and vaping trends that we see in the National Drug Strategy Household Survey. The last 3 data points, which were from 2016 to 2023. So we've got the 2016, 2019 and 2023 rates. And I've put them up by age group. So the first one is the 14 to 17-year-olds, and then 18 and over, the adults. And then I've also split up the adults at different rates here. So firstly, if we look at the youth sample in this survey, we had, if we're looking first at smoking, the 14 to 17-year-olds, smoking's really disappearing. It's a really good news story, right? And it was tracking along for 2016, 2019, not much change. But in this last data point, it really has dropped off. So things are going well there, again, with smoking uptake. It's down to less than 2% now for smoking uptake. But then when you look at the vaping rates, they've just exploded amongst this youth sample in this last data point. So that is obviously very concerning if we're talking about harm reduction. That's not really the group that you want to be seeing using vaping products. So that is something that, you know, until this last data point, we had very low use of vaping products. And then if we compare, so then the youth and the adults, so for smoking, Smoking's going down amongst both youth and adults now. And we can see again, like amongst adults too, smoking's really dropped off a lot more in this last data point. And now if we look at the trends in vaping though, on the other side, this last data point on 2022, 2023 is the first time that youth vaping has been higher than adult vaping. So again, that's not really the sort of prevalence that patterns that we want to see there. Next, I thought we'd just look at sort of the different age groups that we have here and looking at the trends. So amongst smoking, you can see that before smoking was higher amongst these younger age cohorts or younger age groups here in the 2016-2019 sample. But then in the 2023, it's moved. This the sort of age distribution is really definitely moving to an older group. So we don't want to leave these older people behind. And then again, looking at vaping, it is very much a young person's thing when we look at the rates of vaping amongst by age group. And amongst these older age groups, we see it really drops off. So again, it's very much amongst the young adults is where the vaping is taking off. So I guess I just want to, again, highlight that these groups here, we do see though the drop off in the youth, young adults smoking, but we have seen this also increase in vaping. And then again, highlighting though we haven't seen that drop off in smoking amongst the older groups. So as people aged 60 plus. And again, I don't think we want to leave our elders to continue smoking and get left behind as well. Okay, so just acknowledging too that those estimates from the National Drug Strategy Household Survey for young people, they may be underestimated even because they are done in the context where parents may be present when the young people are filling in the survey. But this is some data from the Australian Secondary School study on alcohol and drugs, which is done within schools, and so the kids are filling it in without parents present. And we do see similar trends though the estimates are higher. So we do see this past month smoking has dropped off between the last two waves of data that was collected. So 7.5% for past month smoking in 2017 and 3.4% in 2022, 2023. And then again, we see the past month vaping has really increased in the last data point up to 15.7% according to this data. So again, slightly different estimates, but same trends. So what does this all mean? So it raised the questions of will that drop off that we've seen just in the last data point, will that continue? And all these past trends have been based on, obviously current approaches that we're using, which are largely focusing on reducing demand for tobacco products. One of the major policies in Australia has been the high tobacco tax, and that's still increasing. There's still another 2 scheduled increases in tobacco tax. So the high prices of tobacco combined with the current cost of living pressures, the price of everything's gone up, including rent and petrol and so on, that may accelerate things, but it may also, we may reach a ceiling whereby we start feeling quite uncomfortable about the ethics of that impact on those people who aren't quitting. So we do have to balance and think about that sort of social justice issue that may be some harmful effects from tobacco tax as well, and thinking about how we can balance those issues, the benefit that we get from increasing, making tobacco products far less attractive to people, but also the tax can also have that impact on households as well. We also have new tobacco control measures coming in that haven't been implemented yet, but are underway. So that will be things like new pack warnings, standardised packs in terms of pack size, ban on menthol, pack inserts and so on. So, what will that mean for smoking prevalence? Impact's likely to be positive, but also, likely to be incremental. So we wouldn't necessarily expect to see a large reduction due to those measures. And then the last question that I have is, will the tighter restrictions on vaping products that are coming in encourage abstinence, or will it shift some people to smoking? So maybe particularly those young people that took up vaping, it's going to be critical that they're supported to go in the direction of abstinence rather than maybe even switching to the more available product, which will remain smoked tobacco. So again, this is all based on continuation of current trends. But the topic today of our symposium is endgame. So what does a commercial tobacco endgame mean? So firstly, you can have an endgame goal. And this is one definition from NIP et al. Publication published this year. An endgame goal is an aim to reduce tobacco smoking and in some cases nicotine use to a low level, such as less than 5% by a specified and reasonably imminent date. And so having a goal, like Australia's got an endgame goal of less than 5% by 2030, but it doesn't specify how to necessarily get there. But many people believe that using current approaches and just continually adding in, more of the same may not be enough to get us there in the timeframe that we want to make it an end game. So that's where there's been this thinking about, new policies, things that are more structurally addressing those fundamental factors that keep people smoking. So this is a definition of endgame policies that was offered by McDaniel et al. In 2016. These being initiatives designed to change, eliminate permanently the structural, political and social dynamics that sustain the tobacco epidemic in order to end it within a specific time. So a lot of the policies that we've been relying on in Australia wouldn't meet that definition. So here are some examples of endgame policies that have been discussed in the literature, as well as also some examples of implementation or attempts to implement. So we've got very low nicotine content standard for tobacco, the tobacco or nicotine-free generation laws, large reduction in number of retailers, ending all, and by that I mean obviously tobacco retailers, ending all tobacco supply. So there could be an abrupt end to tobacco retailing or phased in approaches, such as gradually reducing the number of licenses available. Other restrictions on supplier purchasing, so that may be using something like a tobacco purchasing licence or other non-profit models. And one thing I'd highlight with all of these is that it's important to consider them as packages, and the idea that we just need one measure is probably, again, going to not to be enough. So we've seen in tobacco control just generally, it's a package of measures that work best together, and that will be the same with an end game. So next, I'd like to just consider whether endgame thinking in tobacco control is progressing, and has endgame policies and thinking, has it gone mainstream yet? So here are some examples of proposals over time, and these are, I guess, new publications that I've picked out as being key policies that have been discussed. So we've had like the nicotine reduction policy discussed in 1994, proposed by Benowitz and Henningfield. 2003, Ron Borland published a regulated market model publication outlining that model. We had Jonathan Lieberman in 2003 also discussing ending the for-profit tobacco industry. Cynthia Callard and colleagues proposed a not-for-profit supply model in 2005. 2005, we had Nigel Gray and colleagues publishing a proposal for how to regulate all nicotine products in a way that phased out the most harmful first, and then also those other nicotine products. Hall and West discussed a cap and trade, nicotine reduction and cigarette phase out as a combination of policies. Dick Daynard published about phasing out cigarettes in 2009. We've also had George Thompson talking about a sinking lid policy. We haven't seen much more about that policy progress since then, but that was an interesting proposal of reducing the amount of tobacco that's available in the market each year. So that, you do that on imports. So that would just gradually reduce how much is available to distribute through retailers. We also had the tobacco-free generation model proposed in 2010, and Simon Chapman's purchasing licence, which was based on pharmaceutical style regulation of tobacco. So what's happened with that? So these were all sort of like the proposals and so on, but there's also been some workshops and more engagement amongst researchers and policy experts. And one of these was a University of Michigan workshop, which was done in June 2012, funded by American Legacy Foundation and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And that brought together 40 experts from different countries to, again, put these policies on the table, discuss them, and that the outcome of those were published in that 2013 special issue on tobacco control. So I'd encourage you to go back to that special issue and have a look at the policies that were published there. There was also an Endgame Summit in Canada in 2016, and you might recognise some faces in the crowd there. Maybe this person here holding holding the banner. And so that again was like bringing together people from researchers and so on to discuss the concept of an end game at a national level. We also had Action on Smoking and Health, who is one of the oldest tobacco control advocacy organisations in the world, and they marked their 2017 50th anniversary by announcing that they were pivoting away from tobacco control and towards being cigarette-free as a cigarette-free goal. 2018, they also announced the Moonshot program with the aim of working towards a world where cigarettes are no longer sold as a consumer good. And in 2019, there was a launch of Project Sunset, which was a global campaign to convince policymakers to phase out the sale of commercial combustible tobacco products. And we also launched, Marita Heffler's in the audience, and she's the convener for the Project Sunset Oceania group. And so that was also launched in 2019 alongside the SRNTO first conference. We also have other organisations in the US, such as Truth Initiative, also changing their phrasing from tobacco control to actually ending tobacco industry's influence and the commercial tobacco industry. Also recently, just last month, we had the first US National Endgame Summit, which was hosted by Action on Smoking and Health US. And here's some photos from that event there. And so that was also a great opportunity to bring together both non-government organisations, people from the community groups, as well as experts and researchers to discuss this idea of how we will achieve an endgame. And so I'm also really pleased to announce that with in collaboration with Project Sunset, we're going to host an Oceania Commercial Tobacco Endgame Summit next year. So we haven't got the dates just yet because we'll be liaising with key invited people and organisations to set when they're available. So if you want to register to receive updates about that or Project Sunset in general, please do. I've got the little QR codes on the tables too. Please do fill in the form with your details so we can keep updated. And also acknowledging that there's also FCTC, the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, is also moving forward on more progressive measures. So they've named these forward-looking measures. So they're measures that go beyond the minimum required of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. And so this is linked to FCTC Article 2.1, and there will be a expert group report that will be reported at the next COP11. So just looking now at international developments in commercial tobacco endgame implementation. This is a summary, I guess, of the current situation of different policy approaches that have been attempted around the world. So first we have Bhutan actually banned tobacco manufacturing and retailing with laws in 2004 and 2010. But this was temporarily reversed in 2021, but it's also yet to be reinstated. So that one's maybe a little bit up in the air as to what's happening in Bhutan and how that has gone. We also had Aotearoa's smoke-free action plan that was then implemented in laws that were passed by the majority Labor government at the time. But as we heard yesterday, those were repealed, unfortunately. Malaysia also put forward a smoke-free generation law as part of their Control of Tobacco Products and Smoking Bill 2022, but it was removed before the bill was passed. So again, there was some discussion there about smoke-free generation in Malaysia, but it didn't quite make it to law. In the UK, we've got bipartisan support for reintroducing the smoke-free generation bill after the election that's recently been held. So it was actually before Parliament, but with the election called, everything went into caretaker mode, and so we haven't seen that progress. So everything's sort of on the edge, I feel like, happening internationally. And then we've got this interesting example from Brunei Darussalam, which is maybe an accidental endgame. So in 2012, updated warning label requirements effectively ended the legal tobacco market because the manufacturers didn't comply. And so this is a graph that was provided by UNODC from Comtrade data looking at the imports of all manufactured and unmanufactured tobacco products. And also substitutes. So it's also got the vaping products in there. And you can see it really falling off a cliff here when the new laws came in. So there really isn't a legal tobacco market in Brunei, which is an interesting case study to look at. So these are national levels that I'm looking at, but we've also seen some subnational implementation of endgame policies. So we've got Batangas City in the Philippines that still has a retailing ban on the city centre. Near complete retailing bans have been implemented and nicotine-free generation laws passed in several US cities. So we've got in California, there's 2, Beverly Hills and Manhattan Beach, have got complete or near complete tobacco retailing bans. Minnesota, we've got examples from Bloomington and Little Canada of just a phase out of retail licenses being sunsetted. New York State, I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I haven't heard that one, so I'm not sure how to pronounce that. New retail licenses in that local government area. And in Massachusetts, we've got 6 cities that have passed nicotine-free generation laws. So things are really progressing in the US, particularly at that subnational level. So these give us some opportunities to learn what factors have facilitated adoption and implementation of endgame policies, how the illicit market has responded in these different locations, and what control measures may work to reduce that illicit market. How do governments manage issues like the reduction in tobacco excise revenue and what alternative sources of revenue they've drawn on to fill that gap? What's the interaction between restrictions on smoked tobacco products and alternative nicotine product use? And also importantly, whether these policies have reduced inequalities as they've been implemented. And also I think it raises the question of if we compare what's happened in those places that have implemented endgame policies and those that have not, but have maybe progressed more standard demand reduction policies, we can start looking at whether we can achieve a tobacco endgame with traditional policies that may be considered safer politically to implement, may be easier, or whether we do need that real phase out to happen via those more endgame policies. So where is Australia on the endgame policy continuum? So I've put some policies on here that I feel like are on a continuum for product standards. So if we've got here standard control measures, we've got reduced ignition propensity standard for cigarettes, written health warnings, health promotion inserts, things like that that give people some information, graphic health warnings, stick warnings, and so and moving up to maybe a filter ban, and then finally like no active constituents at addictive levels. So that's like your very low nicotine content standard here. And we're sort of in the middle here, I guess, with stick warnings being announced on the to be implemented. And we have all these other policies here. Some other ones that could go in there would be the complete flavour additive ban, and I should have also put plain packaging in there. Okay, so then we've also got retailing restrictions where we sit on that. So you can go from just not allowing sales to young people less than 18 years old. That's a pretty standard tobacco control measure, and you could implement sort of progressively raising that. So in the US, we've got some places that have got 21 as the minimum purchase age. Some people have proposed 25. I haven't seen that implemented anywhere. But then we have this smoke-free generation, and then at the end, not selling any commercial tobacco to anyone of any age. So, and we also have options around like licensing. So there's retailer notification schemes, display bans, and so on, and maybe very large retailer reduction measures up here towards the endgame thing. And we're still in Australia back down earlier on in that supply control phase there.